welcome to the Camino Coach Show, where we delve into the mindset needed to perform at your absolute best. And today we're going behind the visor of Adam McLean, from racing on the roads in Northern Ireland to the Isle of Man TT and the International Road Racing Championship. Adam's story is all about true grit. Today we're joined by Adam McLean. How are you, Adam?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks, Craig. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. And how's your off-season treating you?
Yeah, it's been, we've had a good off season. Training's been going well. We've got a bit of riding done in Spain and, yeah, looking forward to the season ahead.
Great. So, Adam, you're from Northern Ireland, so road racing is in your blood.
Yeah.
Um, have you always wanted to race on the roads?
Yeah, essentially it's something when you grow up in Ireland because road racing is essentially part of the heritage here, and you grew up going to events like the Northwest 200 and the Ulster Grand Prix and some of the smaller events like the national races that are known as, so your Cookstown 100, Armoy, Tandragee, places like that. So I think from a young age it's always something that's there, and as much as you're deterred by your parents at a young age, always to stay away from it. Once you get to that point in life, if it's something you want to do, you'll always find a way to get there.
So, does that mean that your background, family-wise, wasn't connected to racing?
No, so in the early days, coming up through mini bikes and short circuit racing, my family was involved, and then essentially once I, turned 18 and got a job, my parents sort of took a back seat in racing. So, actually, when I was 18 years old, I didn't race at all. I just spent that year gathering up the money and getting a bike and a van and stuff because I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew that I wasn't gonna, if I was gonna do it, I would have to do it myself. So I did my first road race at 19 years old. It was essentially myself and a friend of mine had gone racing. We had bought a caravan at £800, split it between us, and he had a van, and we went from there. So yeah, that's essentially where it started.
And if we go back further, then with the starting with the mini bikes, how old would you when you first put your leg over a bike?
Yeah, so I was, nowadays it's relatively late on. I think I was 8 years old when I did my first race, and essentially we just did a mini moto series that ran in Ireland here, and we did a couple of races across in the British Championship, but not too much. And then I went short circuit racing, came up through 125s, did a couple of bits and pieces across the water at BSB, but again, money was the big restricting factor. Parents are just normal working people, so as I'm sure you're aware, the financial aspect of it wasn't easy. And then yeah, so the short circuit career for that reason wasn't really going anywhere, and obviously I was wanting to go road racing anyway, so that's sort of where it all came about. And yeah, over here there was more support to be had for road racing. So in terms of like right up through my short circuit career, I didn't really have any sponsors or anyone sponsoring you bikes or anything like that there. And then within within a couple of races I had on a 125 when I first started road racing, Brian Farquhar it gave me a Super Twin to ride at Armoy and Scarborough. And the following year I got a 600 to ride, and then 2017, which would have been my third year road racing, I was riding a super sport bike for MSS Kawasaki. So it all snowballed fairly quickly. That was my first year at the TT as well, 2017. So um, yeah, 21 years old, and I went to the TT. So I was a bit green to it then. So we'll call it a reality check, to say the least.
Well, we'll delve into that for sure because it must have been an amazing experience. But if you were to encapsulate for anybody, any viewers, the difference between short circuit racing and then all the adjustments that you need to make to ride on the roads, to race on the roads.
Yeah, I think it's quite more similar in some ways than you would expect, and slightly different in others. And I think the thing about it is it's still tarmac and it's still the same motorbikes that you're riding. So you find in terms of bike setup isn't all that different, maybe slightly softer and stuff like that. But it's more the mental side of things. Obviously, there's no room for error. So I think where the 100% is on short circuit racing is almost like a step back slightly in road racing, but it's quite tricky as well because everyone's still riding at the limit, and yeah, it's just being careful not to overstep the mark, and I think having the right mindset is important for that.
So stepping back to 2017, your first TT. So you're on the start line, visor down. You're waiting for your turn to roll up and get the tap on the shoulder. And what was running through your mind?
Yeah, it's I think it's like everything. I'd done the homework. I'd spent a lot of time over there in the winter of 2016, and I'd done a lot of homework. And I put the effort in that end of things. So essentially, it was into the unknown. You didn't know what to expect. You didn't know what was coming. All you could do was just rely on the knowledge that you had and the information that you'd learned, and try and put it into practice. So yeah, it was. Yeah, exciting, and yeah, it doesn't change. I think the feeling from the first time, if you've done it once or you've gone, raced there for 20 years, I think the feeling doesn't change for the TT. So yeah, it's quite unique in that aspect.
And then there must be quite an anticlimax because there's all that build up. You've been doing the homework, you've been going around in a hire car, you've been going for weekends and whatever else to get the miles in that you have to do to be able to, that with the instructors and the like, to be able to get the license to be able to take part. So there's all that build up. Then
Hmm.
obviously you've got practice week and then race week, and
Hmm.
then you've got this sort of going home. It must feel like a real um,
Yeah,
difference, that
yeah.
you've built up to that event.
Yeah, there's so much work that goes into it prior to it. Like, I can remember I had done, before I had set off on a motorbike, I had done the best part of 100 laps in a car. And driving around in a car in normal traffic conditions takes the best part of an hour. So, to put in like 100 odd hours of driving, and then all the onboards that you're watching, like I still watch onboard videos on a daily basis, even at this point. So, yeah, it's one of those things that the learning never stops. There's always something to learn, and because it's so long, obviously it's over 37 miles long. So yeah, there's always something to learn. So I think it's like a never ending project that goes on year round. But yeah, the whenever you've put in so much work and effort, and obviously you've the that aspect of it. Plus, you've the races prior, so you normally do a couple of short circuit races, and then the Northwest 200, which is a week long event, and then you go to the Isle of Man, so you're there essentially for 3 weeks. Um, so yeah, when you come home again, you don't want to leave. You're happy enough to just stay at home for a couple of days and cut the grass and take it easy, walk the dog, and just do the simple things because it's been yeah, it's quite a step back down to reality, having been in such a high intensity environment for that length of time.
I can imagine. I can imagine. And for fans that don't know, how brutal is a full lap of the Isle of Man TT? It's 37 and three quarter miles. How from a rider's perspective, what does it take?
That's a tricky one to answer. Yeah, it depends. There's a lot of factors in it. I think the first couple of nights of practice, it can be really difficult to get your head around, get your eye on, get your eye in, just get up to speed, and everything's coming at you so fast, and it's quite overwhelming at that point. Towards the end of practice week, that's whenever things start to fall into place. You start to get your bike set up. You start to get your eye in with the circuit and get your mind up to speed. You start looking, much further down the road than you would have been at the start of the week. And at that point, it's sort of relaxing isn't the right word, but it's not as intense once you've got to sort of the end of practice week. The riding the bike isn't as intense, and it starts to all fall into place quite nicely. Mulky Quail uses a really good description where like short circuit racing is like heavy metal music, and riding the TT is like classical music where everything is fast and flowing and one corner leads into the next, and it's just about carrying momentum and a nice rhythm. And so it carries a different mindset with it to go faster around there than it would a short circuit. But nevertheless, like, when you talk about fast flowing and referring to classical music, you're still going through corners, with a few inches to spare at the edges of the road and fifth and sixth gear, so it's really fast, really small margins, you're threading the needle, would be another one, used to describe it in a lot of the faster sectors. So, it's different.
And what would you think would be your biggest takeaway, or or the lesson that you learned from your debut back in 2017?
Yeah, I think the mindset back then was quite different. Obviously, I did the TT in 2017 and 18, so I was 21 years old. And then I didn't do it again for one reason or another, between injuries and COVID and various other things, up until last year. So I had actually, like, 6 years away from the TT. So I'd done two events and then 6 years away. So I think going from being in your early twenties till your late twenties, your mindset shifts quite a bit, and how you approach different things changes. So I think back then it was I think. It's a tricky one to answer. It's a few years ago now, so I think hmm, I think you can assess it more now than I did back then. Back then, you were just trying to go faster and just keep pushing every corner. And obviously, around there, that's not the way to approach it. But whenever you're that young and green and new to it, you don't really understand that there is another way. Whereas when I'd been away, obviously I'd spent 6 years away from the TT, but I'd still been doing road races, between the Northwest 200, the national road races here in Ireland, some of the European races. You gain a lot of experience and sort of get a better understanding of where you can find the time and where you're losing out, and what the best way to approach thing is to what the best way to approach it is to find a bit more speed. So yeah,
And that was going to be my next question, actually. That you'd have this long break with COVID, obviously no events taking place, and
yeah,
then recovering from a couple of incidents.
yeah.
So 6 years layoff to then come back. Was it what you expected coming back, or what was it like to get back on the island?
Yeah, it was a really good experience this year. I don't really think the layoff did me much harm, to be honest. As I say, I did it in 2017 and 18, and then 2019 I was injured. 2021 and 2020 was COVID, so it didn't run. 2022, things didn't work out with the team I was riding for that season, just after the Northwest, so that essentially ceased just before the TT. And then 2023, I just decided there was nothing on the cards to do it. So and we'd been away that long, so I didn't see any options. And then last year there was a good option to come back with an experienced team who have been doing racing at the Isle of Man for many years. So I came back on just the Super Twin with the Yamaha R7, and essentially that was just to because I'd been away for a while and I didn't really want to commit to a full blown superbike and super sport and super twin, all the classes and stuff. So I was quite happy to just go with the one bike and see how things went. But I think the difference in perspective from when I was a bit younger until now was quite good. So I actually would say that making a TT debut for anyone is time enough in your mid-20s, because it just gives yourself that bit more time to get more experience as a rider and I think just more level-headed as a person. So yeah, it definitely takes a bit of experience.
And you were straight back up to speed. You finished ninth
Yeah,
in that Super Twin race. So that was
yeah.
a great effort to come straight back on the R7. What was that race like for you?
Yeah, it was really good. It was obviously wasn't ideal that we only had the one bike, just for the track time aspect of it and the fact that we'd had been away for so long. So, yeah, I was happy to finish in the top 10 for being away for so long and the lack of track time. I think Josh Brooks was riding one of the Rev to Race Yamaha R7s, which was a very similar spec to the one that I was riding, and he finished eighth, and I think he was just a few tenths of a second ahead of me. So, and then he went on to finish in the podium in the senior race. So to be up there at that point, only being there with one bike and the layoff, I was really pleased with that. And I felt comfortable in myself with the way I was riding to do that, which is obviously the goal, because as I say, you have to be careful with the Isle of Man not to overstep the mark. So yeah, to be riding comfortably at a pace I was happy with, and for the circumstances to be where we were, I was pleased with how the race went.
Good stuff. And you've also had some big moments at events like the Northwest 200 and the Manx. Which do you prefer, the Northwest 200 or the TT?
It's always got to be the TT. I think the Northwest 200 is a a great event. It attracts so many fans and high profile riders and stuff. And it's my local event. Only live about 30 minutes from the circuit, and grew up going to the Northwest 200 as a kid. Those were the sort of reasons that you wanted to go road racing in the first place, was events like that. So yeah, enjoy the Northwest, and I've been fortunate enough to be on the podium a couple of times as well in recent years. So yeah, it's a good event, but I think the TT as a circuit to just ride is unrivaled to anything else, really.
And you talked earlier about the mindset shift of being a little bit older and a bit more level-headed. What do
Yeah.
you think is needed for a good mindset going into road racing? If you were going to give somebody some advice.
That's a tricky question to answer. I think a funny story that I had was I was explaining to it was quite a young rider who wanted to do the TT, and I'd said to him, do you know, when you go to Spain and you get into a hire car, you want to get into it and do handbrake turns and burnouts and stuff, and he's like, yeah, 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 and I said, well, see, whenever you want to get into it, drive it slow to save fuel. Then that's when you know you're ready to go to the TT. So just that shift in mindset from just being a wee bit older, a wee bit wiser, and a bit more level-headed is is what's needed. And then, like another example is when you look at some of the more experienced riders. I was listening to a podcast that Keith Moore had done, obviously a really successful road racer, and he talked about the crash he had in Union Mills back in, I'm not sure what year it was, possibly around 2009, 2010. And that was back whenever, if there was maybe a skiff of rain or a few damp patches, they would still run the race, whereas nowadays they won't run it if it's bone dry. And he talked about how he could, John McGuinness was in front of him on the road, and he could see he was catching John quite fast. And then they come down into Union Mills, and the road was damp, and he went down. And after the race, John McGuinness had said that he could smell the rain in the air, and he backed off just because he could smell the rain. And like, that was the time when John was at the height of his career, winning TTs, winning seniors, breaking lap records. So for someone like John, who was, at the very top, to to make that decision in that moment in a race, not even practice, in a race, sort of, it that gives a good example of the mindset that you need to have to ride there and be safe and to be sustainable.
Absolutely. And the TT, the actual circuit itself is a very, we've talked about it, in the past, it's a very high flow environment
Yeah,
because the consequence is so high.
yeah,
That feeling of being completely immersed in the activity, um, to sustain that for the length of the races, and like you say, the build up from practice week, it must be quite unique set of
yeah.
circumstances to be able to be in that space consistently for the time that you're there.
Yeah, I think for that reason, like, the TT is so mentally exhausting. Like, at a short circuit, for example, you come in after a race or a session, and you can almost instantly give feedback to your mechanics and stuff about what the bike is doing, and stuff like that. But at the TT, if you've come in, like I've seen in the past, where I've came in, and the person that's been working with me has been asking me questions about what the bike's doing, and I haven't been able to answer, and it's actually taken maybe half an hour before things start to come to mind about what the bike was doing and how the session had actually went, because uh, you come in off the bike, and a lot of the time you're yeah, it's really mentally taxing. Especially, you look at the privateer riders, who are obviously everything's more difficult as a privateer, but especially at the Isle of Man, where you have the stress of riding the bike, and then when you're not on the bike, you've got to think about preparing the bike, and you've got the stress of that on top of it. Whereas to just be a rider at the Isle of Man is really difficult from a mental perspective, just because your concentration levels are so high for so long, and you do so many miles, and it's the event itself is 2 weeks long, so you're riding almost every day for 2 weeks, and when you are on the bike, it takes you know 20 under 20 minutes to do a lap. So a race, or a practice session or whatever, you could be on the bike from an hour to 2 hours, whether it be an evening practice session or a race, almost every day for 2 weeks. So I think by the end of the fortnight, I think you're physically and really mentally fatigued.
There aren't many riders that have been able to win at the TT and then also back it up with winning championships in short circuits. Steve Hudslop jumps to mind, Carl Fogarty, these sort of people back in the day. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think back then there was more short circuit riders were doing the TT like those guys. Whereas nowadays, you still got your Peter Hickmans, Davy Todds, people like that, but obviously you've still got your TT specialists like Michael Dunlop and Dean Harris and James Hillier, those sorts of boys, who the TT is their main main goal.
Yeah, and it doesn't really cross over that well, does it?
Yeah, although I think you know, back then in the early days that you spoke about with the likes of Fogarty and Hislop, those were two exceptions. But I think back in that era, almost everyone else, or more of them, were road racers. There was more road race specialists. Whereas nowadays, I would almost say that you've got to be riding short circuit now to be sharp on the roads. Like you can see more and more riders like Michael Dunlop are doing more short circuit stuff than they ever did, so that they are sharp enough to compete with those riders at road races. And yeah, try and do plenty of short circuit miles myself as well. Yeah, just to keep yourself sharp.
And you also had a stellar season last year in the International Road Racing Championship
Yeah,
in the super sport category. You got 3 race wins and finished runner up for the championship. So,
yeah.
what was that like in comparison? They're a weekend event, aren't they?
Yep, so they're more like just your normal structured events. Obviously, the Northwest 200 is over a week, and the TT is 2 weeks. But the rest of the road race events that we do, both here in Ireland and in Europe, are all just weekend events. I would say the European road races, although they are road races, they would be closer to short circuits than what the road races are here, for example. So, like you go to the TT, you've got a lot of bumps and jumps and different things to contend with. Same with the Irish road races that we have here. You've got jumps at pretty much every circuit that there is, whereas out there the surface is the surface is much better, and they tend to be like halfway between a short circuit and the road races that we would have here. But it was a really good experience to go and do something different, having been road racing here in the UK for a few years. So it was something that I had wanted to go and try, and then the opportunity came up with a Dutch team called Performance Racing. So I went and did some riding with them in Spain at the start of last year, and then unfortunately we missed the first round of the championship, which was in the Netherlands in a place called Hengelo. And then just after the TT was my first round of the European Championship. So um, we went pretty well straight away. Which I was happy about, obviously. But again, I did a lot of preparation prior to the events when it came to circuit knowledge. Uh, so just from my experience from learning the circuits like the TT and stuff, you your circuit learning ability becomes quite good. So it was between watching onboards and visualizing and stuff. I had quite a good knowledge of the circuits in my own head before I'd actually ridden them. So that enabled us to be fairly competitive straight away. So out of all the circuits that we did 5 rounds, and out of the 5 rounds, I was under the lap record at each circuit. I think I hold 3 of the lap records, and the other 2 I was involved in the race and under the existing one, and the rider I was battling with happened to go a few tenths quicker. So yeah, it was a really good experience, and we raced in Imatra in Finland, Horus in the Czech Republic. We had 2 events in Germany, Chimay in Belgium. So it was quite a nice mix of events and different places, different cultures, and it was certainly an enjoyable season from that perspective.
And what's the following like in Europe for road racing still?
Yeah, it's surprisingly good. Even the following at the events, places like Amatra, there were massive crowds there. Obviously, Amatra is has a lot of history in itself. It was a GP circuit back in the 70s, and they raced there right up until the 90s, I think it was. And then they got the race going again a few years ago. So it's got a lot of history, and it's got a big following out there. Same with places like Horst in the Czech Republic. Really big following there for road racing too. And was even quite surprised when I got there at the level of some of the teams. So the likes of the team that I'm riding for were using X World Supersport bikes, and the rider that won the championship that I was battling with for the season, Wee Paul Racing. So they actually had finished on the podium at Phillip Island at the first round of the World Supersport Championship. So for a team at that level to run at the front of World Supersport, to then be bringing that knowledge with them to the road racing events, it shows the level of some of the teams that are there.
Yeah, they're very competitive, I'm sure. And
Yeah.
so after your return to the TT in 2024, what are the next steps? What are you aiming for in this season?
Yeah, so we are riding at the European Championships again, and obviously the goal is to keep winning races there. And then for the Northwest and TT, I've got really good bikes, and my preparation's been going well. So looking ahead to those, I think haven't really set myself any goals yet. Obviously, just to improve on last year, and make sure the preparation that I've done is as good as it can be, and give myself the best possible chance. And we'll just shift the goals as the events go.
And you've ridden in Super Sport and in Super Twins. Which is
Yeah.
your favourite class?
Yeah, I enjoy both those classes. I think that's something else that's quite unique about road racing, where you ride several classes. I've ridden in superbike in the past, the likes of the Northwest and stuff, and a lot of the Irish road races. So it wouldn't be uncommon when the past where you've gone and ridden in super sport, superbike, and super twin all in one weekend. Obviously, you look at the TT, and a lot of the top riders, or a lot of the riders are riding in every class. But yeah, this year I'm riding in the Super Twin and Superbike, or Super Twin and Super Sport will be the main focus. But some of the European races and the Northwest 200, I'll be riding in Superbike as well. But again, it's quite tricky because obviously the more bikes you ride, the more you're dividing your attention, and there's obviously only so much attention and effort that you have to give. So it's quite tricky. So because I more competitive in the super sport and super twin categories, obviously I'm a bit smaller, so it makes it more difficult to ride the super bikes as well. So I prefer and enjoy riding the smaller classes more. So I tend to just stick with the super twin and super sport. But yeah, I think in terms of which of those two would be my favorite, I'd say the 600 is obviously most enjoyable to ride because it is a proper race bike. Although the super twins have came on a long way in recent years. Obviously, the Kawasaki's were built out of commuter bikes, whereas now in the last couple of years you have the introduction of the Yamaha R7 and the Aprilia, which are essentially production race bikes in the same form as the likes of Super Sport and Super Twin or Super Bike now. So they've come on a long way, and I've really enjoyed riding the R7 last year. So yeah.
You're broken into the top 10, but what do you think it actually takes to become a podium contender in the classes that you've been in at the TT?
I think the main thing that it takes is just time and knowledge, and just keep building. Because obviously, because the circuit is 37 miles long, there's so much to learn, and I think you can it just takes each year to just keep chipping away and chipping away and chipping away, and find a little bit more time and a little bit more time here and there, and building confidence, because obviously there's a lot of corners and sectors that they take a bit of building up to. So yeah, like places like the end of Crunkabody, it's at the end of a long straight. It's in sixth gear, and the road drops away in the exit, and you've got inches to spare. So it takes 3-4 years to build up to do that flat out, and as front boys are on the likes of the super sport bike. So yeah, it just takes just keep building on circuit knowledge, and just keep building the previous year and keep chipping away at it year after year. Appears to be the way. So like the likes of on the Super Twin this year, on the last lap of the race, it was red flagged. So I got to Ramsey on the last lap, which was a flying lap. And then I was on the mountain on the way back down whenever the red flag came out. So whenever we had looked at that last lap from the start line to Ramsey, and then put the sector times from the previous lap to finish it, we had like an ideal time or an ideal speed of 120, and the lap record's 123. So to get to 120 and the lap record being 123, you could be fooled into thinking, we're not that far away. But I think it's those last small percentages, those are the hardest to find. So I think to get to a level fairly quickly is easy's not the word, but the hard work comes with the smaller margins and just taking time to get there and being careful not to overstep the mark.
You also did the Manx last year as well and got a podium in the historic. So what does the Manx bring for you? Is it a completely different approach when you go to the Manx?
Yeah, it's an event that I really enjoy. So it's been branded a few things in recent years. So it was the classic TT, and then it was branded back to being the Manx Grand Prix, and then for this year it's been branded back as the classic TT. So essentially, what it is you've got the same riders that compete at TT, and it's the same circuit, but essentially on classic bikes. So it's really enjoyable because it hasn't got the same intensity as TT, because obviously you're riding classic bikes, and because you're on the same circuit, you're still learning, and you're still getting miles in, and you're still making progress. So it's another opportunity to build on what you'd learned at TT, for example. And yeah, it hasn't got the same intensity, but it's also really enjoyable because you get to ride bikes that you don't normally ride. So, the likes of in the past, I've ridden the 500 classic, the 350 race. I've ridden in the classic superbike, which is sort of superbikes 750s from the 90s, and then I've ridden in the 250 GP. So I've been on the podium on a Yamaha TZ 250. So one of the last, sort of the last model or the most recent 250s produced. So although you in the same week you can be riding a 500 single cylinder from the 1960s, and you could be riding, one of the last of the 250 Grand Prix bikes ever produced. So it's a really unique event from that perspective, and yeah, it's really enjoyable. So that's another good thing that I enjoy about road racing. You ride so many different bikes in a season. So like last year, I think I raced at the Northwest Kawasaki ZX10, Kawasaki ZX6, and a Z650 Super Twin, so three Kawasaki's. I went to the TT and rode a Yamaha R7. I went to the European Championship and rode a Yamaha R6, so that was five different modern machines that I'd ridden. And then at the Manx Grand Prix last year, I'd ridden a 350, 500, and classic superbikes. That was another three different bikes. And then at the end of the season, we went to Goodwood and competed there and ridden a different classic bike again. So I think in 2024, I'd competitively ridden nine different bikes. everything from, modern superbikes to classic superbikes to super sport, right through to, bikes from the 1960s.
So adaptable is the word.
Yeah, adaptable. I think that comes with road racing as well. Just the ability to, ride a couple of different bikes in the same day and adapt quickly from one to the other. I remember when I started road racing, I was riding a Moto 3 and a Super Twin. So to get off like a Grand Prix bike that's small, light, and nimble, to getting on an ER 650, which was the total opposite. Took some time to adjust, but I think after you've been doing it for a few years, the ability to adjust comes a bit easier. All
Your
right,
favourite rider growing up?
favorite rider growing up. Yeah, I was a Casey Stoner fan back when I was growing up watching Grand Prix, and yeah, Casey Stoner fan, and then in road racing would have been John McGuinness. Was a John McGuinness fan. Actually, back in the day, Ryan Farquhar was obviously like he had won a lot of national road races and stuff, and so growing up in Ireland, watching the national road racing scene, I would have been a Ryan Farquhar fan. And at that time, he would have ridden for McAdoo Racing, so I ended up riding for, whenever I was older, riding for both McAdoo Racing and Ryan Farquhar, so that was quite nice. Yeah, those would have been the riders that I would have looked up to.
Good, good. And your favourite section of the Isle of Man TT course?
Um, I actually enjoy a sector that a lot of people don't, which is Ginger Hall to Ramsey. It's a really bumpy sector. It's quite technical and fast, but it's very rewarding whenever you get it right. So I really enjoy that sector from Ginger Hall to Ramsey, and then for some reason I'm quite strong. There's the sector from Ramsey to the bungalow, which is essentially the run from just up the mountain. I really enjoy it. The road opens out and it's got a nice flow to it, and it appears to be my strongest sector the last couple of times I've been there. So yeah, enjoy those couple of sectors. But yeah, it's so unique, and there's so many different aspects of the circuit. Yeah, it's different.
And if you had to describe the TT in 3 words, what would they be?
Yeah, unbelievable if you want it in one word. 3 words. Yeah, we'll just go with unbelievable.
Yeah, 1 word will do. One
One
word
word will
will do.
do for that one.
And have you got any other dream events that you'd like to take part in? Macau, Daytona's just been, obviously,
Yeah,
Pikes Peak, something like that?
yeah. I think I've had the opportunity to go to Macau a few times, but yeah, I don't know. It just never. It was never. Macau was never something that was really on my radar. Just didn't really appeal to me. I like the idea of Daytona. I think there's a lot of riders there that have Daytona on their bucket list. So I would say Daytona and Dakar as well. I would say it's definitely something, a challenge that I would like to take on whenever I finish with road racing. Obviously, James Hillier has done it a couple of times now, and he's the only rider to have raced the TT and Dakar. So I like the idea of having ridden essentially the most difficult road circuit in the world, and then looking at the most difficult off-road event in the world. So yeah, it's something that I'll definitely be looking at in the future.
Definitely not shying away from challenges, that's for certain.
Definitely not.
So the last thing, Adam, is if we've got a young rider that's watching this, and he's watched the TT on television in June each year, and he wants to be where you are, with a ride and fighting for the front of the of that of those classes. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, just it's all about experience and taking your time. I think those are the main attributes I think that's important for the TT is yeah, plenty of experience and take your time to learn it and yeah, make sure all the conditions are right to give you the best opportunity to do it safely.
Good advice indeed. So, how can people follow you this season and keep up to date with what you're doing? What's your socials that they can follow you on?
Yeah, so we've got our Facebook page, Adam McLean Racing. So we'll have various updates through the season about how we're getting on at each event, and yeah, just how our season is going and what we've been up to. So yeah, that's the best place to keep up to date. Yeah, so on our Adam McLean Racing page at the moment, we're actually doing an offer where it's for just fans to get involved, where we have for £100 you can get your personal name written on a section of my helmet, and then at the end of the year you'll be entered into a draw to win the helmet. So it's a really good opportunity for people to get involved with racing.
Well, it's been great, Adam. Superb to catch up with you. Have a great season and on all the best this year.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on the latest content. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to you.